Hi, and welcome to another episode of Mental Health Mondays with Dr. David Morgan, brought to you by Onward Productions. Huge shout out to them for providing this service. I'm very grateful to Shane and Mandy for doing it, and thankful to all of you who have tuned in and have questions for me. I appreciate that. I think that people that watch and that write in with questions, to me, that means that you're trying to do something, that you're trying to change an aspect of your life. And I think that's wonderful. Change is difficult. I'm a big fan of it, but it is very difficult. And so kudos to you for trying to do something with your life. That's great. If you have any questions for me related to the gospel or mental health, here's where you can reach me: onward.mental.health.mondays@gmail.com. And I'll do my best to respond to your question in one of these videos and hopefully give you some insight on how to move forward. So with that, let's get to today's question. It comes from a viewer who has a question about family relationships, especially how to accept and love someone where maybe you have feelings of mistrust or where that relationship has been damaged in some way. So the viewer says, how can I change my thinking about this particular person when I don't feel like I can be fake? I can't figure out how to like or be close to someone that I absolutely do not trust. And that's a very common experience in relationships. Kind of this, we don't feel like we want to be fake. We want to be authentic in relationships, but then we don't want to be authentic with our negative feelings either. So it can be a tricky thing to navigate. The viewer brings up two different points. I want to talk about both of them. First is, how do I change my thinking about this particular situation? So habits of thinking are created, and they're changed the same way that they are created, by just repeated experiences with the same thoughts. The more we have a certain thought, the more likely it is to prevail in our minds. Sometimes what happens is we form initial opinions about people based on usually very limited information, kind of maybe just the first time we meet them or something we hear about them. And that kind of forms like this almost baseline default opinion. Sometimes that's a good opinion. Sometimes we think, wow, that person sounds really great and I have a lot of good feelings for them. Or sometimes that can be an opinion of mistrust or negative feelings. And that default opinion about them tends to be what we go back to time and time again. And so unless we actively strive to change the way we think about that person, we're probably not going to. That default opinion is just going to prevail. So we have to kind of intentionally insert new thoughts and opinions about that person in order to get it to change, in order to get the opinion to change. There's an example from the scriptures in Jacob chapter 5. This is the allegory of the olive trees by Zenos. And if you remember, there's these trees are kind of a composite of good and bad. The trees are good for a while, and then they start producing bad fruit and bad branches. So they pluck out the bad branches and put in good branches and try to nourish the tree. And it's just this kind of constant battle of trying to get these trees to yield good fruit. Towards the end, in verses 65 and 66, they're kind of in their last effort of pruning the vineyard and trying to get these trees to produce good fruit. And so I'll read to you. It says, and as they, the branches, begin to grow, you shall clear away the branches which bring forth bitter fruit, according to the strength of the good and the size thereof. And you shall not clear away the bad thereof all at once, lest the roots thereof should be too strong for the graft, and the graft thereof shall perish, and I lose the trees of my vineyard. For it grieveth me that I should lose the trees of my vineyard. Wherefore ye shall clear away the bad according as the good shall grow, that the root and the top may be equal in strength, until the good shall overcome the bad, and the bad be hewn down and cast into the fire, that they cumber not the ground of my vineyard. And thus will I sweep away the bad out of my vineyard. So how's the Lord getting the bad out of his vineyard? He's getting it out in a very methodical and stepwise process. He's saying, we're not just going to pluck all the bad ones out already because the trees will die. He says, we're going to put in a little bit of good, and when that grows and gets stronger, then we'll pull out some bad. Then we'll put in some more good, and as that grows and gets stronger, then we'll pull out some bad. So think about that in terms of your opinions of other people. If you just hold the negative opinion and never try to insert anything good, then that negative opinion is going to prevail. But if you try to insert some good, and then let that good sit there for a while, then in time it will gain strength and you can pull out a bad part of the opinion. And then you just keep doing that process. So what I would suggest is trying to find some positive things about that other person. Surely there are. We're all like these trees. We're composites of good and bad. There's not like people that are all good and people that are all bad. Believe me, I know. I've been doing psychology for a quarter century, and no one's all good, no one's all bad. Definitely mixes. So find some good things about that person where you could form a good opinion. Maybe she is a good mother in some ways, or maybe she's kind to others, or maybe she takes care of herself, or maybe she is punctual or something like that. So something good, like a good branch that you can insert into your tree of opinion that probably has 90% negative opinion, but get about 10% in there. Try to nurture that. Try to think about that. Wow, I'm so impressed with this particular quality in her. Let that grow, and then remove some of the bad, and then just do that process over and over again. Now that process could take months or years just because of the way opinions and thoughts work. But that's, I think, a process that can be effective. The second point that the viewer brings up says, I can't figure out how to like or be close to someone that I absolutely do not trust. And I totally agree. I don't think that you are going to like someone that you can't trust. You're not going to tolerate them very well, that you feel like you can't trust. Feelings of mistrust are automatically going to breed kind of contentious and hostile feelings. And so saying, how do I love someone that I don't trust? It's tough, but I have some ideas. First, I would suggest trying not to be so black and white, kind of like we were talking about with this idea of no one's all good and no one's all bad. Is this person 100% untrustworthy? Probably not. I mean, maybe 90%, maybe 92%, something like that, but probably not 100% untrustworthy. So that's a place to start and say, how much trust do I have in this person? Do I have 10%? Do I have 15%? And go with that. And I think that will start to help, again, clear away some of those bad thoughts and say, well, at least in this area, I can trust that person. I can't trust them in this other area or in these other areas, but I can trust them in this area. And that starts that process. The other thing I think that's important is to strive to have empathy for people. Most of the time, when we work with people in our lives that are difficult, that just kind of have this bad mojo around them and bring us down, these people aren't very happy either. And they have had some pretty negative experiences in their lives, which have led them to be unhappy. And they walk through their lives creating all this chaos. I don't think that they're thrilled about it. I think they're devastated about it. They don't usually admit it, and they don't often take responsibility, but sometimes that's because they're just so deeply wounded that it's very, very difficult for them to do so. So I'd suggest, striving to kind of understand them at a deeper level. I think when we do so, we end up gaining more compassion for people, when instead of them just being this, crusty person who causes all kinds of difficulty, when you figure out, wow, look at all the drama and the things that she's gone through in her life, maybe that explains a little bit why she is right now, why she is the way she is right now. And although that won't necessarily affect a trust situation, it can increase compassion, which I think can increase feelings of love, which is the last part of it. Can you love someone regardless of their behavior? Yes, you can. The Savior does it all the time, and thank goodness, right? I mean, he loves us no matter what we do, no matter how many times we betray him, no matter how untrustworthy we've been with him. He always, always loves us. Now, I think that is a highly refined spiritual characteristic, and I think that it is in very short supply among mortals, but it's something that we can strive towards, and we can certainly ask our Heavenly Father in prayer to bless us with that feeling of charity towards other people. Say, please help me develop feelings of love for this person regardless of what they do. And I think that at some point that even becomes a spiritual gift, and I think we can do that, and it'll probably give us opportunities to help us toward that end. So again, thank you so much for your questions. That was a great question, and I hope it's helpful to that particular viewer and to any others who might be having difficulties. If you have any questions for me, like I said, you can reach me at the email I mentioned at the beginning. You can also find more information on my website at www.ldspsychologist.com. You can see previous episodes of Mental Health Mondays. You can see some of the things I've done for Onward Productions, and I have a few books out there that you might be interested in. You can also find me on Instagram at LDS Psychologist. Just a reminder, like always, that change is possible and change requires action, and keep moving forward. Thanks, and talk to you next time. Bye-bye.